The John LeBang Show has been known to make people laugh, sing, think, scream, throw things in rage, and generally lose their minds. Listener discretion is advised.
Scheduled programming to bring you a show on the edge, broadcasting worldwide and out to the greater universe. You're listening to the John LeBang Show.
Greetings, Earthlings. We're back on the microphone. Thank you for joining me. Well, my friends, it's been a couple weeks since you've heard my voice sonically blasting through this microphone into your eardrums. We are in a beginning stage here, and it may sound slightly different because the studio is in disarray. It's not even close to what it normally has been, and we're updating it to make things an even better experience for you, the listener. And soon, more people are going to be able to see what's going on in the studio, as we've just come up with a major couple upgrades that we're going to be sliding in as we do a cosmetic upgrade for the show as well. But that's just on our end. On the world end, we have the hearings going on about the texts and how crooked people in the FBI are. We also have the president going to meet with Putin, which has caused a major uproar. So there's been a lot of things happening. And it's amazing, we take a little time off here and there, mostly in the summer and a little bit towards the end of the year. So when we're off there and we don't get to talk about these things, a whole lot builds up. Sometimes there's weeks when we're in this, the regular pace of the show, May-ish. We've been doing the show for weeks on end without any breaks. Sometimes you have to be creative about what you're going to talk about. But not when you take a few weeks off. We could talk about the rain right now because we haven't seen rain in a couple days or a couple weeks, I should say. It's been fairly quiet on the precipitation front. But it's interesting that when you have time off, how much there's to talk about. And when you start discussing these things, you go, wait a minute, I'm not interested in something that happened a week ago. I think that's why the news cycle is the way it is. Even myself, who has been digesting this information over the past few weeks, intermediately, mind you, because we were doing other things. But when the Trump thing came with the Putin thing, and Trump, who just speaks in various shades of vagueness. See, everybody likes to pinpoint Trump lied on this, Trump lied on that. You see that in the mainstream media. It's not that Trump lied. What he does is he speaks extremely vague. He generalizes. Maybe people don't like generalizations. I understand. In general, if you just listen to the guy, it's not that he lies. He may exaggerate a little bit, and maybe you don't want that in a president. But it's a hell of a lot more fun having Trump as president from a commentator standpoint than it is to have Obama as the president. Obama was he was stiff, and he presented himself as this intellectual. I don't know how intellectual he was. He just spoke well. And he had good script writers. Trump speaks more off the cuff. The intellectuals out there won't appreciate that as much as the little guy. The little guy who carries this country decade after decade. It's always on the back of the little guy. It's nice for the little guy to get someone to speak to them in their language. But the intellectuals out there, or the people who think they're intellectual, because everybody seems to think that they're smarter than they actually are these days. These individuals out there that think they're intellectuals, they're so above the common man. They can't handle a guy like Trump because he doesn't speak to them. They want big words. They want a vast vocabulary out of their president. Doesn't matter if the president knows what those words actually mean or gives a crap. Uses nuance in the words so that he sounds good. Doesn't matter that, but to these people it does. And a doofus like Trump, who speaks the common man's language, is hated because of that specific thing. And they point out every little detail that they can that Trump isn't speaking correctly. He didn't use enough nuance in his vocabulary. So his vague sentence can be torn apart by these, the types, the intellectuals in the mainstream media. They're smarter than everybody. Do you ever get that feeling when you watch CNN, MSNBC, NBC, even Fox News? These guys or ladies. But these intellectuals that have degree in media, whatever that means, think they're above everybody, and they talk down to many of us, instead of just reporting the news. Don't give us a spin. Don't give us any bias. We don't even want your attitude. Talk like a robot. It's going to be great. They're replacing people with robots, and it's not going to take long in the workforce I'm speaking of. Isn't it going to be great when the newscaster on the mainstream manufactured news, bunch of fakers up there, isn't it going to be great when they replace them? And trust me, if they heard this, they'd be like, we can never be replaced. We're way too important. Script readers, right? These people, when they're replaced by virtual reality, maybe robot casters, especially, you see how realistic these sex robots look. They're going to have anchor robots one day. I know you intellectuals out there don't think that. No, that can never be. But if anybody is overpaid for the job they do, it's you guys. So eventually, your job is going to be threatened. And just because you think you're part of the clique doesn't matter. Because there's a lot of little people that think they're part of the clique. They're in those organizations that make you feel like you're part of the clique. Those little societies, these little exclusive societies. Even the little people have them. You got your local Mason Hall down the road where everybody goes and drinks beer, or the Democratic clubs. They're the same thing, just on a more common man level. They're coming for all of you. Don't think because you're part of something and you're not the very top, very, very top. If you're getting a paycheck from anybody, you're not on the top. You might be on the third rung, fourth rung from the top. Doesn't matter what degree you're in. But if you're not at the very top, you're expendable, buddy and lady. You're expendable. Now, if you do a good enough job, they pay you a little bit better. If you hold up the propaganda, if you give out the information that they want the world to believe, then they pay you a little better and you're a little higher up on the degree. Maybe you're not quite as expendable as the little guy down at the Democratic Hall or the Mason Hall around the corner. Because they can get another one of those a lot quicker. Somebody else will want to join. You can go recruit whoever you want because people want to be part of a clique. I haven't even got to the subjects of today. I've been off a few weeks, and that's what I was kind of talking about in the beginning. I've been off a few weeks, and what am I talking about? This type of thing. But it all relates, but it isn't the big part of the news. See, my analysis of the world is a little different than all those other commentators out there. They're going to jump on the bandwagon of the daily news cycle, talk about what is going on in that, and then they just move along. And that's how a lot of these conversationalists on the radio, on the podcasts, that's how they do their show. My commentation, if that's a word, commentation, my commentary on the world is a little different. I'm looking at the individuals, the groups, and how they react to certain things. Because remember, in the Hegelian dialectic, we've talked about this before, there's problem, reaction, solution. So whatever problem arises, in the case we are currently speaking of, it's Trump vaguely speaking about subjects when he's with Putin, when he's not with Putin. Whenever he's speaking, he's picked apart for how he says something because he speaks the common man's language. And the intellectuals don't like the common man. So why would they like their language? They look down on us. So I calculate all this together. I'm not so much worried about what Trump... I mean, he didn't look good there with Putin. But if somebody's smart, they might try to get really close to their enemies, because there is an old adage saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Trump might be engaging in that type of theory, that type of idea. Trump's pulled off a lot of amazing things, starting with winning the presidency and beyond. You have to wonder if he really is smarter than your average Joe, and he just knows how to talk to the average person, and he just doesn't care about the elitists. They're not a majority. The elitists are not the majority. But they like to run things. They like when you follow them because they're so smart and you're not. And because they're so smart, whatever they say should be followed without question. Because whether it's right or wrong, whether it's true or false, they're smarter than you. And you, as the common person, shouldn't question any things that they say. We've got to take our first time out, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back. Maybe we'll delve into the more specific news when we return. Don't go anywhere now.
John will be right back right after this.
Yes, he will.
Check out the new book from Derek Shelmerdine,
Rock and Roll Unraveled.
It tells the story of rock and roll from its roots right up until the mid-'70s punk.
Rock and Roll Unraveled.
Not just the music, but also the events that shaped the music.
Rock and Roll Unraveled.
It includes the backgrounds to recording sessions, singles, album releases, births and deaths, epic concerts, and festivals.
Rock and Roll Unraveled.